Hey guys, it's time for another patented hop follow-up video. I tested out the Recover 2020 chassis for Glock pistols for a TFB TV video, and I had a lot of issues trying to use iron sights, and it was not a whole lot better using a slide-mounted red dot. Basically, the iron sights are way too low to be effectively used when the brace is deployed. A slide-mounted red dot is absolutely required at a bare minimum.
That's super not pleasant.
But Recover is now offering an improved optic rail, which was released right before I finished my review on the chassis, which pretty much made my review obsolete before it even came out. Nice, thanks a lot.
So the problem with trying to use iron sights on this thing is basically that you have to get your face really, really low to the plastic strut on the brace. That means that I can't get a sight picture here. I can get a sight picture all the way down here. This is me. I'm basically smashing my cheekbone as hard as I can into that strut, just so I can get my face down far enough to see the sights. Now I can bring my face back farther, and it makes it a little bit easier, but then I'm also smooshing my face into this little protruding nub, and it's a much less effective stance. Kind of want to be a little more hunched over. So if you want to get those iron sights, you got to just bury your cheekbone right in the strut. Some people probably have a different shaped face than I do, and they may not have as much of a problem, or they may have significantly more of a problem. A piggyback red dot gets you a little bit higher than standard irons, so, you know, maybe about there. Still not comfortable, particularly if it's cold outside. Seems to make a big difference. So, now that we have a red dot mounted on the top, we get a pretty comfortable, you know, relaxed stance with this. Now, I'm not going to probably be quite as stable as I would if I was really burying my face down into the gun, but it should be a lot more comfortable. Also, this gives me a very, very open field of view, so let's go ahead and see how it works. Oh yeah.
You could buy the red dot rail separately on their website for about $30, and it replaces the right side accessory rail mount, but it also has a built-in right side accessory rail, so you can still mount a light or laser to the right side of the gun.
These are held in place with one metal bolt, and they also have a plastic stud to keep it from rotating. And additionally, the optics rail version has a little clip that interfaces with the sidewall of plastic, kind of up here. So it's got 3 points of contact. It should be very stable. However, because it is made out of plastic, there is some flex, which I'll show you in a second.
You can still take the gun in and out of the chassis without removing the red dot rail, which is pretty convenient. I'm not really concerned about the optics rail moving. There is some flex in the mount, but it's probably not a big deal for anything short range. You may also have a return to zero issue if you take the gun out of the chassis and put it back in. Initially, I mounted up a Bushnell Trs-25. It was the only spare red dot I had on hand with a low-profile mount. After shooting it the first time, I replaced the TRS-25 with a Romeo 5 using the low mount. It sits a little bit higher, but it still should be pretty usable. I'm going to probably do another range session or two with that before I shelve this thing. With a micro red dot mounted this high up and far forward, combined with a drop in the brace, it puts it at just about the perfect height for passive aiming with night vision, so that's interesting. We'll come back to that. Most importantly, it's a significant improvement over using either iron sights or a slide-mounted red dot. With the red dot this high and this far forward, your face position is greatly improved. It's way more comfortable to shoot and aim. You don't have to hunch over the gun as much, and the brace doesn't batter you in the cheek. This also gives you way more potential accuracy. When you have your head this far down and this close to the iron sights, you get a major air gap issue. Because you're normally meant to hold a pistol at arm's length, the way the sights are set up means that there isn't as much of an air gap between the front blade and the rear notch at that distance. If you bring it closer to your face, the gap gets much wider and you're no longer able to be nearly as accurate. There's also a potential issue being that close to a slide-mounted red dot. You may have some vertical parallax issues. The optics rail for the Recover 2020 chassis fixes pretty much all of the comfort and functional problems that I had with it. It's such a night and day difference that it's kind of crazy they didn't include this thing with the kit from the very beginning. There's almost no reason to even sell the kit without this option. It's 100% better. Now that we have the main practical and functional issues solved, is there a use case for a Glock in a 2020 chassis? I think there kind of is. With the red dot mounted, the gun is now even bigger than it was before, so it's still not really going to work as a concealed gun. Maybe if you put it under a jacket on a single point sling, doing that 80s Secret Service Uzi thing, but I kind of doubt it. If you treat this as a micro PDW, it makes a little bit more sense. It's a much more stable and accurate shooting platform than a handgun is. If you watch the original footage of us shooting the gun with the irons or the slide-mounted red dot, basically every shooter gave up and just tried to use it as a handgun. But it's a really big, heavy handgun that's kind of hard to shoot. With the red dot cantilever rail add-on, it's basically just as usable as a micro PDW. The red dot makes it almost as shootable as my 4-inch barreled AR-9 pistol, but it's more portable and it's lighter and it has the same ballistic capability. So how do we use this to our advantage? I mentioned night vision earlier, but I don't think that's actually a good idea. You run the risk of the slide or the big wing on the back hitting your NV device, and that's a good way to destroy $2,500 worth of gear in about a 20th of a second. I can get my head far enough away from the gun to prevent that, but if I had to take a hasty shot or a shot from an angle, I might mess up and bust my intensifier. I could use both rail sections, put an IR illuminator on one side and an IR laser on the other side, and shoot it that way. If you've got some fantasies about doing real deal forward observations group CQB shit, that could be an idea as well. You get more stability than a pistol, you get a real deal red dot, weapon light, all that stuff, and because it's so close to your body, it's very compact and maneuverable, even more so than a pistol is. That stuff is way above my pay grade, so I won't speculate too much about that. I know a lot of guys want to use something like this as a backpack gun or a truck gun. I'm not sure I believe in those use cases. It's hard to imagine a realistic scenario where the Recover 2020 would come in handy, but where you weren't just able to use a short AR or a real 9mm PDW instead. I'm not going to start EDCing one of these things in like a small backpack or a shoulder bag. It just doesn't make sense. The other possible use for the Recover 2020 is as a kit gun. I can actually see myself backpacking with the 2020 on a sling. It's a lot more capable than a handgun, it's much smaller and lighter than a rifle. As configured with an empty 21-round PMag and an empty spare 17-round PMag on a Gen 4 Glock 17, the 2020 weighs about 3 pounds. Obviously, you went with 22 LR, you'd save a ton of weight in the ammo carried, but there's no way you're going to get more capability for less weight in a centerfire gun. So, carrying this thing while backpacking, that's 3-pound empty weight. You have at least 2 17-rounders on the gun, so you don't have to tuck spare mags somewhere into the rest of your kit. You've got a real deal red dot with a long-ass battery life like a Romeo 5. You've got a weapon light. That kind of makes sense to me. Now, am I ever going to actually do that? Probably not. Honestly, the inclusion of the optics rail makes this thing so much better that I could almost understand if you want to buy one. I still think the CAA Micro Roni chassis kit is still a waste of time. I think the whole Flux ecosystem is overpriced and underfeatured. So with the inclusion of the optics rail, the Recover 2020 is probably the best of the 3 options, although that's still not saying a whole lot. If you really think you need one of these, if you can come up with a way to make use of it, then it is an economical way to create a PDW out of the Glock you already have. Anyways, let me know if you have any questions. Thanks for watching. Talk to you guys later.